actually agreeing to speak with us. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Before we start talking about the concept of well-being and your views on that, can you just, for the benefit of the listeners and viewers, give a quick overview of what you do, where you live, what your responsibilities are, and so on and so forth?
Okay. So my name's Louise Nuttall. I am the head of HR for BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. So we're a charity and a private limited company. So we have kind of two arms of our business. One that's a charity that looks at, and we're also a membership organisation. So there's one arm that kind of concentrates on that, and the other arm that concentrates on the exams and generating income and revenue, which then is ploughed back into our charity. So we're about 250 employees. We've got a few people based in London and Bedford. 95% of our people are based in Swindon. And at the moment we are furloughed about 25% of our workforce, and the other rest of the organisation is working from home quite successfully. So. Yeah, so we pretty much locked down before the announcement from the government, and so we made the decision very early. And in between all of that, we've also moved offices. So at the moment, we currently have no office to go to right now. It's currently being we're moving into a new building, so it's currently being prepared for us as we speak. So we are currently homeless. So we have to be able to get back to if we wanted to.
That's interesting. I mean, people talk of lockdown. You're moving offices there. Brilliant. I love it. Now we did have a brief conversation about well-being. Before we start the thing, I just want to get your view on what is well-being. What is your definition of well-being?
It's interesting. You see a lot of people talk about it, and people tend to view it mental well-being and physical well-being, basically, and that is anything about your body and anything about your mind. It's all about how you keep yourself maintained during times of stress, positivity, negativity, etc. It's all about what works for you, what techniques, etc., works for you for being thriving in an organisation or yourself in a personal situation.
Okay. Now you just talk about physical well-being and mental well-being, but if you look at what is actually out there, people talk of financial well-being, people talk of emotional well-being, and people say that emotional well-being is the thread that connects your physical well-being, financial well-being, and mental well-being. What is your review on that? Do you think the market is actually dissecting it more than what is required, or is that a valid way of looking at things?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, obviously, emotional well-being is very much connected to mental well-being, and I think, to be fair, I think people are much easier and happier to talk about maybe physical well-being. It's very much easier to say I've got a broken arm or a broken leg. It's probably easier to see. Whereas financial is a bit more, I would say, people aren't necessarily open to that or want to admit to the financial well-being aspect of it. And even less so if you have to kind of say physical well-being at the top, people are quite happy to talk about it, or I've put on some weight, or I'm not very fit, very easy to talk about that. Financial probably less so, and emotional or well-being even less than that. And I think people are worried about the stigma. And I think for me, in terms of well-being, it's not necessarily the action, it's how you react to it. So no matter what happens, what we can control and what isn't with our control is how we react to situation. And that's where it links into kind of emotional and mental well-being. And if we are resilient, or we have the right techniques and the tools in our tool bag, I think we've got the ability to react to a situation in a positive way. So some people treat a lockdown or it's easy to make pandemic or lockdown as oh my god, all the stuff I haven't done, whereas I kind of view it as okay, it's a different way to work, but think of the possibilities that brings us, either as an organisation or as an individual. People are taking that to say, well, if I'm furloughed, that's an opportunity for me to learn new things, for me to get network with my friends and my family. other people are using it as well. I'm just going to sit there and just wait. So it's all about your approach to the situation, and your resilience and your stamina, I suppose, whether that's physical or personal or mental, about how you deal with that situation.
Okay. I mean, I was reading something 2 days back. It was a research published by, I think it was UCL, where they said 25 million people over the age of 16 to 60 said they are actually highly anxious about the future and they're worried about their well-being. And given that UK is only 70 million people, and you've got, if you look at the working population, probably that's 40 million people, and 25 million people are worried about well-being. That's actually a scary situation. Now, when you actually start looking at it from a corporate point of view, I've seen a lot of organizations, offer a lot of well-being programs and things like that, just as part of their, existence. And some have actually thought of this as a strategic thing and done a strategic way of looking at the whole thing and then say, okay, this is what our well-being strategy is. This is how we're going to approach it. What would you, in your experience, think matter? I mean, which would be much more effective? Are we better off stepping back, looking at the big picture, and then doing things, or do we address something which is a perennial problem now, and then start reflecting on the learnings that we have to develop a strategy?
My own opinion, I think we should be doing both. When I was asked at a recent webinar by one of our directors, what are we doing with our people and what initiatives I've got for the future, it's kind of like, well, I don't know. And I had to be vulnerable in that, because what you have to do is you have to think about what we need right now, and there might be some things that we need to put in place right now, because no one really could have foreseen this lockdown. So there are things that we may need to do immediately, and there's things that we've done. For example, we've done about managing teams remotely, how to build your personal resilience, etc. Things that we weren't planning to do as part of the strategy, but things that we put in place because our people needed it. We put a one-pager to talk about how we can support our staff. We talk to different organisations to see if that we can beg, borrow and steal some guidance and some help, etc. So we've not been precious in terms of the information and the guidance that we sent to our staff. Again, none of that was planned as part of the overall strategy, but it's something that we need to do. So I think it's a bit of both. I think you need to do some immediate stuff right now. While you've highlighted people are struggling, we need to do something about that. Secondly, in terms of the strategy, yes, it is pivotal. I think with our staff, the well-being of our staff is paramount, and I keep on reinforcing that message. And it does need to be a strategic view, which is supported by the execs and senior directors, because if they don't see the well-being of your staff being an essential criteria of your workplace, then there is something wrong. There is a problem there, because if our people are well and are happy, therefore they are going to be more productive, more engaged, more creative, come up with better ideas, and in the end your organisation will be more productive and definitely more successful. So actually it kind of stems all the way back to, there is clear business sense which says we need to invest in the welfare of our people. So it does need to form part of the strategy, and I would say organisational strategy rather than just sits in HR. And I think it's very easy just to say, well, that's a people related thing, that's all that's HR doing. But actually it's an organisation's responsibility to make sure that the well-being of their staff is paramount, because actually it's completely pointless having a wonderful sales target or membership or KPIs or whatever if actually the people that are serving the customers are not happy, because then you're going to end up with unhappy customers, which means they're not going to come back, they're not going to refresh, and your business is then ultimately going to end up failing in the long term because your people aren't happy. So it kind of all links back to this does need to be a thread through the organisation, and actually you should be open to say, well, we're going down this avenue, well, we don't need that right now, but let's move on to something else. So I was actually trying to focus on a wellbeing strategy, and I've actually paused it because right now my focus is now flipped into how can I support our staff during lockdown, which is completely different to how do I support our staff using, I would say, business as usual, or when we go back to the office. That is completely different. So I've actually held on that because I'm thinking it's a completely different world right now. So let's not focus on that. Let's focus on what I can do right now, which is going to help our people.
Okay. So you've got a here and now and then beyond approach to the whole thing. Now, one of the things I'm actually I keep hearing is uh, people actually roll out well-being initiatives across the organization, but individual needs are different. Like, for example, I I might not be someone who needs a physical well-being strategy like gym memberships and healthy eating or fruits at work. So by rolling out something at a macro level, you tend to alienate people who don't need that, and where the genuine need for a well-being is there, it's not being assessed. So do you think it is? Do you guys think before I talk about you guys? Do you think it is possible or it is important to understand individual well-being needs, or is it you actually do a lot of holistic measures and hope that something that you do would actually address the individual well-being need? What's your view on that?
I agree. I do think that people's needs are different, but the way that we are centering our wellbeing initiatives is around the 5 ways of wellbeing, which is linked to the Public Health England. So that looks at different ways. So whether that's connecting, whether that's learning, whether that's giving your time, there's a whole variety of things, and what we're trying to do is look at what can we provide as an organisation to hit all of those. Now, it might be that doesn't suit everybody, but that I can guarantee you there'll be one nugget in there, one piece of initiative, one thing that makes a difference to every single person, whether they want to admit to it or not. I'm hoping that we are doing a whole range of things that ultimately they can rely on, and they know that we will support them as an organisation to them directly, and they can pick and choose.
Okay. And when you talk of well-being initiatives, obviously you are investing quite a bit on those initiatives. Do you actually start measuring? First thing is, do you think it is wrong to measure the return on investment on well-being initiatives?
Do I think it's wrong? I think, to be fair, if you're trying to put something from a HR professional, it's very difficult to put a wellbeing initiative in place without the return on investment. So to get trying to get buying, I think that's when you tend to have to give the return on investment. And also, invariably, it's very difficult to tell. How can you say by implementing X, Y, and Z that's either reduced our turnover, or reduce our sickness absence, or stopping people being off sick, etc. It's very difficult to say that this intervention or this initiative actually made a difference. So I think it's difficult to measure, and therefore not impossible, but I think it's very difficult and I think, to be fair, quite dangerous to start focusing on certain initiatives and then having certain outcomes, because there could be other things that you're doing in the business that's not related to well-being. For example, increasing communication, or looking at staff survey, or changing your line manager, or looking at training, which aren't necessarily, I would say, well-being initiatives, but might be going on at the same time, which may impact and influence people at work and their well-being.
Okay. I mean, the reason I asked that question is because if someone's head is not there in the right place, then probably that's going to impact on their productivity and performance. That's what you said earlier, right?
Yep.
Because well-being. So if you can just tag that to that, because let's say you're investing in me, a well-being initiative, because I'm not sleeping properly, there's something that you're investing which allows me to sleep properly. So that investment that you've made actually has helped me to sleep properly, which means I can then go back to work and do things right, rather than just do just enough to get past. So things like that, can't you not link that and this and say, I mean, it's a simple thing. I know it's not very scientific, but can we not start somewhere? Because that's the thing I was thinking. This is not possible.
If I'm being brutal, I'd say no. And the reason for that is because what I would focus on is actually focusing on why they can't sleep in the first place. Now, that might not necessarily be anything at all to do with organisation. That might be a case because they've got a 6-month-old daughter that's just been born. It might be that they're caring for an elderly relative, etc. So I think it's very difficult to say. So what I'm keen on actually understanding is why they're not sleeping in the first place, and what measures you can put into place which helps them be better as an individual. And it might not necessarily be anything workplace wise. It's all about spotting it, understanding that they're not performing as they should, or that you were expecting them to, or there's a change in behaviours, then having a conversation about, is there something going on and can I help and support?
So, which basically brings to a nice perspective, because well-being, a lot of people are spoken to look at it purely from a workplace, that's perspective, rather than looking at the holistic thing. You don't hire the suitcase, you hire the person who carries the suitcase. So when you talk of well-being, it needs to be a rounded thing. So that was spot on when you said, I would like to understand why that person is not able to perform and what is impacting them beyond workplace is what that matters. So that's something which when I talk to people, some have thought through that, but a lot of people have just done initiatives hoping that it would help people move things in the right direction. So
Yeah.
thanks for clarifying that. And what if you have to give some tips to people from a well-being perspective? What top 3 tips? Given that you manage a team and you're head of HR, top 3 tips for people to manage the well-being.
Well-being, I would say, understand that everybody's drivers, motivations and experiences during this time, whenever, is completely different, and try not to overshadow your life experience with others. For example, some people with 2 kids at home would say, well, I could cope fine, why can't anybody else? Well, you don't know people's circumstances, so that's the first thing, is don't try and overshadow it with your own personal views. Each individual is different. I would say, second point, I would say try to have a whole range of initiatives and don't just go to a out the box, every organisation does X, Y and Z, so I must do the same. So I think try to go for organisational fit rather than best practice, because what will work in a really big corporate will not work in a small charity. So again, have context with your business, because we've done stuff that I wouldn't say is different to it, but it's just we are very aligned to our staff and trying to meet the needs of our staff by listening to them, rather than saying, oh well, that company over there is doing X, let's do that. So that would be the second thing. And I suppose the third thing is trying to regularly check in and get feedback from your staff to understand where we're going. I mean, we tend to try and have a mental health first aiders check-in, making sure how they are, how they're feeling, making sure we get feedback in terms of where we're going and how we're achieving things. So always seek regular feedback from your staff to see if you can, A, make sure you're on the right track, or B, if there's anything that you've missed that you want to introduce. So listen to your staff, I think, the third one.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for your time, Lou. It is a pleasure talking to you as always. Brilliant. I hope to speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.